Welcome to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, where we are on a mission to answer 4 leadership questions from some of the best leaders and leadership minds in the country. Today, we are pleased to have special guest, Dr. Tracy Fitzsimmons. So, Tracy, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, we are pleased. And tell us a little bit about you, who you are, what you do, your background. Give us the spiel.
I'm a president of a university, Shenandoah University, a fabulous institution of 4,200 students, both undergrad and grad.
Nice.
It is in Winchester, Virginia, and in Loudoun County and Clarke counties in Virginia. Private, not-for-profit institution. So I wear the hat as president. I also wear a hat as the lead independent director of Shenandoah Telecommunications Corporation. And I serve on that board and also serve as the chair of the nominating and corporate governance committee of that board. Nice. And I am deeply involved in lots of nonprofits. And I am a mom. I am a mom to 3 children and 4 stepchildren. And so life is full and mostly beautiful.
Nice. Well, I know you and your husband have your fingers in all sorts of nonprofit endeavors around the community, which is fantastic. Yes, you keep definitely plenty busy. So tell us a little bit about what's going on with the school before we jump into the first question, because I know you have, let's just say, a rather special event coming up soon, I heard, through the grapevine, and you saw a few awards and some of that.
We have lots of exciting coming up. So we have Parents Weekend coming up, and we're anticipating a whole slew of parents, particular parents of first years coming up. We have homecoming also coming. We've got our first home football game. Right. But really what's exciting about Shenandoah is that it is a place that is alive and growing and on the move. You probably know in higher education, both in public and private, 4-year and 2-year institutions, there's been a lot of retrenchment. There's been a lot of consolidation. And there's a lot of institutions that their enrollment is not growing. Shenandoah has been blessed that our enrollment is continuing to grow, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. Shenandoah is a really unusual place in that it is constantly leaning into the future. And we have, since our founding in 1875, really focused both on breadth of learning, but depth. We were never a liberal arts institution. We've got fabulous liberal arts institutions in the country. We're not one of them. We do a great job of asking students to think broadly and learn broadly. Right. But we also have always, since our founding, said higher education needs to also be about training and career readiness. And so that's really what we focus on. We do an incredible job at Shenandoah. Our students graduate, they get jobs, they get good paying jobs, and they're really involved in their communities.
And you have parents all over the country like, I want to send my kids somewhere they can get a job.
It's really important. We want you to get your first job. We want you to be prepared for all the job changes and career changes that will come with life. We want our students to be prepared to adapt to the new world because honestly, we're educating them for jobs that won't exist 20 years from now. So we want them to have some skills, soft skills and hard skills, and we want them to be able to adapt to a changing world.
Nice. Well, I know you have an anniversary celebration coming up in the future. I'd love to hear about that.
And your hive. Centennial. That's the vocab word of the day for your viewers, right? So our 150th anniversary at Shenandoah. We have a really interesting trajectory. We were founded 150 years ago, an hour south of here. And as you know, there are very few institutions of higher education that have actually relocated. But we did it in 1960. We up and left Dayton, Virginia, and we came to Winchester, Virginia. That's where our flagship campus is. And that gave us the opportunity to reinvent ourselves, to prove to ourselves and everyone else that sometimes bold, calculated, but risky moves do pay off. And so that leaning in, willing to take risks, thinking about what the future should hold for the institution and for its students has been a really important part of the Shenandoah culture. And honestly, it is still something that is still in the water. It's still part of the fabric here at Shenandoah that we are going to be on the front end of trends that are happening. And if that means an institution needs to get up and move, then do it. If it means something needs to go from the undergraduate to the master's level, then let's get there.
Nice. Which, funny, being a transplant to the Winchester area back in 2013, getting involved with the chamber, and you see all the Shenandoah came here in the 60s and the chamber helped and all of that. And then you're thinking, okay, Shenandoah started in the 60s and this is when it was built, and not realizing that the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would put it, was that you relocated from somewhere else. That kind of got left out of the picture collage.
Right. And that we almost died. We were fewer than 200 students in 1959 and 1960 when we relocated here. And we came here because the community opened its doors. The chamber leaders said, we will give you the first 6 acres of land. We will build you the first 2 buildings.
Wow.
They were academic buildings. There was no residence hall. So the community also said, we will throw open our doors and the students can live in our homes until you build the first residence hall. And so it was from that rebirth in 1960 that our close ties to Winchester were forged and have continued since then. But it's a really beautiful connection to the community. And of course, to go from fewer than 200 students in 1960 to over 4,000 now is really a remarkable journey.
That is quite an accomplishment. Plus, just the fact that with that story, it does have a unique tie to the community that, yes, there are other places in Virginia. Let's just say the town revolves around the university. For example, UVA, James Madison, Christiansburg with Tech. And so it's kind of like the proverbial college town. But here it's got a really good mix, a lot better than just, oh my God, the residents have to bail because it's a home game, or oh my God, it's move-in day and everybody decides to take vacation so they can be out of town. It's a nice, non-disruptive, really good, solid mix of not just you in the community, but just with the chamber, the local businesses, the nonprofits. It's really a unique blend that I haven't seen in a lot of places.
Really, Winchester and Frederick County and Shenandoah have learned to grow together. And it hasn't always been smooth. I don't want to be Pollyannish about it. There's, the university is going to expand. There's always a small group of folks that are saying, hey, are they getting too big? We don't want them to take over the town. And that's fair. They have a right to express their opinions there, and we welcome them. But I have to tell you, we could not be as strong as we are if it weren't for the extraordinary local business leaders, nonprofit leaders, the families that have embraced Shenandoah, people who come to our events, who give to the institution, who never went here themselves, but they know that investing in a college or university, as it grows, the local community will grow as well.
I will admit, I have seen more people be donors and more active to a school like Shenandoah that have never gone there than any other school that I've seen before.
It's amazing.
Yes.
Although sometimes I was
going
to say sometimes, Dave, they do that because they love that we bring, we have an extraordinary world-class conservatory. So the performances that are available are at a level they couldn't expect almost anywhere else. For others, they like the lectures that our business school or our College of Arts and Sciences bring. For others, it's because they were treated at a local hospital or medical clinic by graduates from our nursing, pharmacy, or health profession schools. So they want to be involved because of that. Still, others are involved simply because they know having a strong college or university is good for the local economy.
Yes, it is. And last, and then we'll get into our first question. Tell us a little bit about the Hive. You have this old National Guard armory that's there forever that we're doing rummage sales with at Rotary. And now all of a sudden it is this lack of asbestos-filled, beautiful modern center. Tell us just a little bit about the Hive before we jump into our first question.
In 2008, the National Guard in Virginia built a new armory, and they donated the former armory, which is literally here on our campus. Our campus has grown up around it. They gave it to the university. Nice. And they said, you do whatever you want to do with it. We will understand if you need to tear it down. But as we dug into the history, we realized it was the oldest National Guard armory in Virginia when it relocated. And we also realized it was the only National Guard unit in the entire country that was there on the beaches of Normandy on the first day. And then from every war, every conflict since then, we sent people through this National Guard unit out to represent the United States, to fight on behalf of freedom and democracy. Like, how could we tear down that building? And so instead, we decided to rethink what the plan was. And, it was great because we turned to the faculty, staff, students, and community, and they all said resoundingly, don't tear it down. It's historical. It is an important memorial. It is a testament to the people who passed through there and their families, because not all of them returned, of course.
Sure.
So let's keep it. So we've kept it, we've added onto it, and it is the Hive, the hub for innovators, veterans, and entrepreneurs. And very shortly, it will be renamed. It will be named the Hazel Pruitt Building in honor of the Hazel and Pruitt families who donated the funds along with the Commonwealth of Virginia and the federal government for us to do significant restoration. I mean, it needed to be saved, the building first, and then we needed to do the restoration. So as the hub for innovators, veterans, and entrepreneurs, it will welcome business owners, business startups to help strengthen their businesses and their ideas here in the northern Shenandoah Valley and beyond. It serves as a home, an academic home for our cybersecurity, computer science, data analytics, augmented and virtual reality, and engineering programs. So it gives them an academic home, but it also allows us to create an expanded Veterans Center and pathways for veterans and for others to move through Shenandoah to have degrees that are meaningful to them, that will help open career pathways in the future. So we're able to bring it all together, and we have our first big event next week. The U.S. Treasury is doing a 50 states initiative. And in Virginia, we are there one stop to hold this event with 300 plus folks.
Nice. It is good to see that coming out of the community. And like I said, to have that historic building that means so much to be saved and that have folks that were willing to donate is definitely something else. So we're going to jump right into the first question. Not that it's a loaded one or not, but what does leadership mean to you, and what does good leadership look like?
Well, of course, they're not the same thing as your question, I guess, notes, right?
That's right. Exactly.
I'm sure there's all sorts of textbooks, definitions of leadership, and we've all taken classes in leadership, etc. But it's pretty simple, the concept of it, right? It is working with other people. So it's not a solitary enterprise. Anybody that tells you it is, I think they're already making mistake number one. It's working with others, alongside others, to move an entity forward. Maybe it's a business, it's a nonprofit, it's a club, it's a neighborhood association, whatever it might be, but to move it forward. Leadership isn't helping something tread water, stay where it is. It's not helping something fall back, retrench, but it is to help move it forward. So working together, moving things forward towards some kind of common good or a common goal. And, maybe that is a goal of profitability. Maybe it is bringing a new product to market. Maybe it is impacting for social change and social good.
Nice.
So I think that's how I would describe leadership. But did you say you want to talk about what good leadership is?
Well, like I said, what does leadership mean to you? But also, what does good leadership look like?
Gosh, lots of things come to mind. But I think probably the most important piece of good leadership is empathy. Having a narrative imagination, not just recognizing that everyone can have a different experience or different perspective.
Right.
Not just recognizing that if you were in their shoes, you might see it differently, but actually trying to narratively imagine how others might experience that decision, that conversation, that goal in different ways. And I think that empathy requires us to listen really well, to be totally focused, having a phone in one hand, right, and an ear over there, like that doesn't really make us good leaders. To have, to understand when somebody needs humor and when someone needs tears. I think empathy is incredibly important, and I think it's difficult for all of us. It's hard to be empathetic at all times. That doesn't mean you're always agreeable.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you're always saying yes. But it does mean you're always really trying to listen and to imagine what that person, maybe it's a customer, maybe it's a student, maybe it's the client that walks in, what they need, what they want, what they hope for, and trying to figure out how that plays into what the goals of the institution or company might be and what you can actually make happen. So I think that empathy is really, really important.
Nice. I like where you framing it. Basically, you're putting yourself in their shoes, seeing it from their perspective. It's not always the easiest thing, but at least the empathy part of it goes just beyond that as well.
Right. Or at least doing our best. I mean, the reality it is we can't all imagine what it feels like to be in each other's shoes, but doing our best and recognizing that our backgrounds, our experiences bring us to the table with different perspectives, different needs, different ways that we hear things.
At least you care, and at least you're trying. And those are two things that a lot of folks don't do. And you're right. We're not mind readers. We don't always know.
Exactly.
Yes, we don't know everything about everybody. So we can't read their mind and know exactly what's going on, but we can pick up on a lot of verbal and nonverbal cues. And we can also, at least more importantly, we're not going to do that if we don't care. And we're not going to do that if we're not actively trying, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think that if you're empathetic, in our most empathetic moments, we are able to lean in towards flexibility. We're able to better understand when we're lacking clarity. We can better hear or see how someone's reacting to what we're suggesting. And I think it just helps us be better, our better versions of ourselves.
Nice. That's nice. Well, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this segment of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, and we will be back with our next two questions in just a moment. Welcome back to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, and we are here with special guest Tracy Fitzsimmons from Shenandoah University, and we are going to jump straight into our second question. So what was one of the biggest leadership challenges you've had to face?
Dr. Dave, I'm at the risk of saying the same answer that probably half of your guests say. I'm going to say it was COVID.
You'd be surprised. A lot of them have given other examples, but yes, there's been one or two that say COVID, but yes.
Okay.
So don't feel bad. Yes.
So as the president of a college or university, the year I became president, the markets crashed in 2008. Then we had COVID. And most recently, we've had the FAFSA debacle and sort of the questions about higher education swirling. So there's been three really significant times. They were all difficult. But COVID was the most difficult. And it wasn't the decision about whether to close in March of 2020. That was a relatively easy decision. And frankly, it went relatively smoothly here at Shenandoah University. It was a whole process of supporting people, hearing all the voices, and making the decisions that we did to reopen. And we started reopening in June of 2020 here at Shenandoah University. Wow. And we fully reopened for in-person classes with some hybrid and a lot of distancing, spacing in August of 2020. So that process was so difficult. And mostly because, as you recall, there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of misinformation. I mean, there was well-founded fear, and there was misinformation on top of that. And that's just difficult. When you're making decisions from an instinctive place, from a place of fear, from having to guess on some areas, that's just never a great decision making. And so trying to get rid of as much of the noise as possible, to listen to the voices and make the decisions based upon science. That was difficult. But we did it.
Well, and getting back, and I remember some of the classes where instead of a small room, a larger lecture hall, everybody spread out. It's different.
Tents all across campus.
Yes. But that probably one of the first universities that got as many people back in person as you did, which was quite impressive. And to be honest with you, some of the information you legitimate at the time, science at the time, but you find out things change and you don't know, and it's something brand new and you've never had to deal with this before. So even if someone's telling you what they feel's the facts and the God's honest truth, now you further research, further study. That's what science is all about. And then, okay, well, we weren't as spot on then as we were now. We weren't sure about that then. We're a lot more sure about that now. Things kind of evolve and progress. And then we realize, wait a minute, okay, maybe they were right about this and we weren't sure at the beginning. But being able to take the faulty and patchwork at best information you had to be able to make some decisions, I think was really good. And like I said, being able to get more people back in person and still be able to accommodate the hybrid probably sooner than most everywhere else was something else.
Indeed, we did. In fact, we grew that fall.
Oh, wow.
So many other institutions were closed or said we're going to be totally online, or you get to come one day a week or something like that. But because we were open, people left other institutions and came here and stayed here. And we were happy to give them a path forward. You know, we talked in the last segment, you asked a question about what is good leadership or something. And your question right now, your comments make me think that one of the things we didn't say was that it's about getting the very best data you can get your hands on to help inform your decisions. Not any old data, and all data is not equal in terms of its weight, right, or its validity. Getting the best data, getting the experts in that area to weigh in on it, right? Because I'm a political scientist. I should not be making decisions about whether one closes or reopens about, when we're in a pandemic. And then the other part of it is like, I think that you look for the best in people. Find the best people and look for the best in people, and then let them go and do their thing. So there are a good number of decisions that we made at Shenandoah during COVID and during other times that probably wouldn't have been my decision. It wasn't my first instinct, but after hearing others, we were able to move forward. Let me give you an example. So our goals are always the same, no matter what mini crisis or situation we're in or opportunity. Right. It's how can we provide extraordinary learning opportunities for our students? And then how can we protect our people, our faculty, our staff, our students, our communities? And those are two very basic things, but it meant reopening because we knew students needed to be able to be in person. We needed flexibility so that if they got sick or if they really felt uncomfortable being in person, they would have online options. We needed to give them opportunities to gather in a social way. It's good for them, for their well-being and mental health, and it's good for their career trajectories. Some of them don't have the luxury, many of them, of living in a large home where there's lots of space. So they were like, get me out of this apartment. I've been in here too long. Or my family is housing insecure. I just need to be back in campus in my dorm room. So all of that, like hearing those voices, I think was really important, but it was also about protecting our people. And so we maintained full employment during COVID. Everyone kept the same salary level. We did not do any furloughs or layoffs during all of COVID. And we haven't since then either. Like that was really important because that's about those people being able to feed their families. Many of them had spouses who lost jobs elsewhere. And so if they lost their job, who was going to feed the family? And so that was a way of helping them and the broader community by not creating extra challenges or burdens for our local community who was already caring for lots of other people. So I think we did that all together. And I'll tell you one example, one story. At one point, who knew what was going to happen? And I went to the faculty senate, I went to the staff council, so the leaders of our extraordinary faculty and staff. And I said to them, here are options. We've narrowed it to 3 options. There's this option, there's this option, there's this option. It was in terms of budgeting and enrollment and what the pathway forward would be. And I recommended we go with the middle option. It seemed the most likely. And they talked about it for a while. And then one of them said, one of the leaders of our faculty and staff said, I don't understand. We have always bucked the trend. We have grown when others have declined in enrollment. We relocated to save ourselves. Others don't relocate and they close. We've constantly been at the forefront of opening new degrees and helping society move forward. Why do you just want to be middle ground now in terms of like, you never think we're mediocre before. Why are we going mediocre now? We can hit the numbers. We can help our students and create these opportunities. We can do it safely. And the whole sort of Zoom room exploded with people saying, yes, because that's Shenandoah. And I had the whole, like, I could imagine, I had seen what it looked like, that not overly aggressive and not too conservative, just kind of the middle ground. I knew what that looked like. But they all said, we've got this. Let's do it.
Nice.
And so we changed path. We went with them. And you know what? They were right. They were right. And it served Shenandoah and its students incredibly well. And we were able to help the local community, therefore, as well.
Very cool. Well, I want to ask one quick follow-up before we go into our last question for here. You were talking about the importance of getting data. Not all data is the same. And to bring in the experts and to try to make the best decision possible based on that good data. But just talk a little bit about what happens when you have to make those decisions and you can't access the data, that all of it's not there. You have to make a decision based on imperfect data, but you still have to make that decision. Because I know that really freezes up a lot of folks.
It certainly happens. And so what do we all do? We look at past trends. We look at past experiences that were just 2 clicks off of where we are. We look at what other institutions or other entities have done. And then we go around a table and we ask everyone, based on what we do know, and it is imperfect data, it is certainly insufficient data, but based upon all of that, what do you think we should do, each of us? Right? And so hearing those folks, and that's the point as leaders, that we all want to, like, we've got an idea maybe in our mind and we're like, oh, okay, that person agrees with me. Oh, that one doesn't. No. That is not when I'm at my best leader, or any of us, right? We've got to put that aside and hear what they are saying and ask questions, what we call here at Shenandoah, questions of curiosity. Like, what do you mean by that? How did you make that leap? Take me there. And that is really helpful. And oftentimes going around a room like that, asking a follow-up question or two in what we call reflective structured dialogue here at Shenandoah, that helps us see the path forward.
Nice.
But, leaders, in the end, we also have to be willing to make hard decisions.
Yes. Well,
difficult.
I laugh.
Maybe everyone does.
Very true. Very true. I laugh because one of the coolest examples I ever heard of this, and then I'll jump into the next question, was from Admiral Abel, that we both know. And he said when they would be in an aircraft and they weren't sure, like, oh, I hear a noise, or is that something, or whatever it was, he would ask the most junior person first. And then he would ask the next senior person, going all the way around until it finally, yes, he might have 51% of the vote, but he wanted to be the very last one to chime in. And he wanted the person with the least seniority to be not feel intimidated by anybody above them, and to be able to give their honest opinion and know that they were heard. And I always thought that was really cool, to be able to get everybody's opinion starting from the bottom up. And then you have a little bit of time to process what they're saying. And if this person that works on it all the time, he's around it all the time, I'm not, and if they think that, I'll go ahead and throw my vote in with them, and hey, let's turn this thing around and let's go ahead and land and check this out. And I always thought just that sequence of how they get the information around the round table was just really, really cool.
What a wonderful way to do it. And to recognize that oftentimes the more, as he said, junior person, or the person perhaps with least experience in the area or at the entity, the institution, they may have the most creative idea.
Exactly.
Right? They're totally out of the box. And so they're not encumbered with, well, this is how we always do it, so I guess we'll do it this way again. I love that. I think that's great. I think it's an example of why it's really important around a table. You need a diversity of people. Diversity in all its different forms. You need people who disagree with each other politically and socially, who think and worship and grow up differently. You need people who are newer to the company, to the institution, and you need people who have been there for a long time, because then you're going to get the most useful, the most creative ideas.
And I love the idea of lean process improvement that typically the person who's closest to the problem is best suited to be able to fix it or answer the question on it because they're in it all the time. Where sometimes as leaders, you're not there in it. You're elbow deep into it all day, every day, like they are.
Yes. I was actually on a Zoom meeting this morning, and I was listening. So it was an area I know nothing about. Honestly, I probably didn't even need to be there. I was just helping connect two people, and I got to sort of watch it mostly. And one of them was from outside Shenandoah University, and one is an internal person for whom I have great respect, but don't get to work closely with very often. And it was so fascinating to watch them talk, and the way, the logic, the professionalism and warmth that she managed at the same time, and her access to ideas and data and historical examples were fascinating. And I left thinking, oh my gosh, what can I do to help that person get to the next stage of their career? Like, they are so good. And seeing them in action like that was so exciting to me, because I feel like we're not just about developing students, but we are about helping each other develop as well.
Nice. I love it. I absolutely love it. So let's just get our last question for this segment. What do you think is one of the biggest mistakes leaders make today?
We leaders make lots of mistakes. Probably not recognizing that we make lots of mistakes would be one of the biggest ones. I think I would say
that's a good one. I like that.
Too much social media. I think that too much social media is a real problem for leaders, right? Like, it is hard to be a leader is about being in the moment with the others who are also leading, right? And so it's hard to be in the moment when your face is here. And then when you're thinking about, what am I going to look like when I post this? Or, what's my shtick going to be? How am I going to say something in a short amount of time? How will this look later on? Like, that's not being a good leader. Now, I'm not saying that social media is all bad.
Right.
While I'm not on any social media, I'm not saying that it's bad and condemning those that do. I just want to celebrate those that don't spend all their time doing that. Yeah. That don't feel like they have to post every single thing. So that's sort of the first thing, because the thing about social media is it tends to lead us to center ourselves as individuals or our entity, our company. That's, I guess, the first thing. I think, at least in higher ed, let me speak about higher ed, the industry I know best, but I think this extends beyond it. I think it is most helpful when a leader does their best to be nonpartisan and to lead the institution in a way that is nonpartisan. That does not mean free of values, but politically nonpartisan. We all recognize that there are power dynamics in companies and in institutions. And so if the CEO, if the president, if the executive director, if they are highly partisan at work, they make others feel like they can't speak up, that they can't have their own political opinions, or they have to be quiet about them. That's not fair to use our positions in that way. And I'm particularly concerned in higher education. I mean, the whole point is we want students to get an education beyond high school. And part of that is opening their hearts and minds. It is about helping introduce them to ideas and experiences that are way out of their comfort zone.
Yes.
But if leaders tell them, you should be thinking this and this and this, and if we put too many parameters around it, they can't experience the best education. Yeah. Because the best education happens when you're bringing people together that wildly disagree with each other. Not violently, not judgmentally, but wildly disagree with each other with great passion. Because the reality is we're educating students, Dave, who are going to go out, they're going to graduate, and they're going to work alongside and live alongside and volunteer alongside people with whom they deeply disagree. And if we can't model that in higher education, that how do we expect them to be successful at it when they go out into the quote real world? And so I just think that's really important. And we work really hard at Shenandoah to be nonpartisan as an institution. Yes, we have partisan faculty, staff, and students, but as an institution, we do our best to be nonpartisan while also upholding values. I mean, we deeply are committed to global citizenship. We deeply are committed to inclusion and belonging. But those aren't partisan values. Those are values that are for the good of the whole. They're for the good of democracy.
True. I think making people feel welcome doesn't have a side of the aisle. I love the idea of exposure to new ideas and the how to think, a critical thinking process, not what to think. And like you said, God forbid if half are over here and half are over there at some point, unless you want to exclude one half or the other, you all have to work together. You have to be collaborative, and you still, God forbid, have to get stuff done. And so I love the setting that framework to where you're giving them a process and a mental framework to be able to go out in the real world and be able to work alongside with people that they don't agree with and still, God forbid, get stuff done.
It's true. It's extraordinary working alongside faculty and staff who have very strong beliefs themselves on one side or the other. But to watch them work with students and to role model for students that you can disagree without hate and without violence, without high levels of anger. Like they're doing a great job modeling it themselves.
One of the things I want to throw out there for you before we end this segment and go into our last segment is I love what Johnny C. Taylor is doing with SHRM. They've got a campaign. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend going to their site and checking it out. They're talking about, 1 million civil conversations. And they're talking about bringing civility back into the workforce. And it's starting with one civil conversation at a time. And just that whole philosophy behind that is just endearing. I love it.
Well, I haven't seen the SHRM campaign, but I'm going to look into it. Here we do something called Shenandoah Conversations, and this isn't new. We've done it for 5 or 7 years. And we bring people together in small groups. I mean, it may be a really large room, but with lots of small groups led by a leader where you talk through conversations and everybody around a table gets a chance to answer. And it's often a fairly easy question at the beginning, and then you go around again and there's a more complicated question that might bring out more differences, but you have to listen. You have to create space for that person. You can't interrupt. You can't correct them, but you have to listen. And then after you've done the listening round, you're allowed to ask questions, but they must be questions of curiosity, not questions of judgment, not questions of putting people in their place, but simply questions of curiosity. And when you've participated in those enough, we all start bringing that into our daily lives. So Shenandoah Conversations is really about helping people come to the middle to have very important, difficult conversations. Folks might go back to wherever they were before, but at least they do so with a greater understanding and appreciation for different opinions.
Yes, and that builds a habit. And that's what I love about it. It builds a habit of civility, a habit of listening, a habit of genuine curiosity. So I love it. So with that, we're going to wrap up this segment of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, and we will be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave for our final segment, and we will jump straight in to our last question for Tracy Fitzsimmons, and that is, what do you think is the best way for leaders to improve their leadership skills?
I think to invest time in improving their emotional intelligence. Do tell. It's something that's often undervalued. People want to know what your skills are, where you graduated from college or graduate school, or what your prior positions were. That's all great. That's important. But it's also important for leaders to have emotional intelligence. So to be able to read a room. When have you talked too much? Which, I'm guilty of just as much as anybody else. When have you talked too much? When is it that people are kind of furrowing their eyebrows at you, or when have they checked out, or when is somebody holding something back because they think the room doesn't want to hear it, or maybe they're not quite sure how to get it out, but they know it should be out there on the table. But so being able to read the room, know when somebody's pained or when somebody's bringing something really difficult, perhaps from their personal life, into the room. When is the right time when you have a one-on-one meeting, instead of jumping into the agenda, to put the agenda aside and say, hey, something going on? Do you want to talk? Can I be helpful? Maybe you just need to go today, and that's okay. Right? And so, it's easy when something happens, somebody's parent has just died. You recognize that there's a moment of crisis, but to be able to see that moment 6 months from now, to know that person has had a recurrence of the grief, right? Because it comes in waves, and maybe that's a high point of the wave. Or you can just sense that somebody is worried about something. And we don't always get it right. Sometimes you think there's something there and there's not, or maybe somebody doesn't want to talk about something, but just leaning in to the emotional intelligence piece of it is really important.
I love it. Yes, we just had a friend of mine who's a specialist in emotional intelligence, and that's his line of study. That's, all his, and it's just amazing to see the continuity of how important that is with leaders and leadership. And unfortunately, I think how many good you can move the needle on it and improve it. Bad, how many people don't realize how low theirs is.
Or they think it's too soft, too touchy-feely. But I really do think it makes us all better.
Well, I've always been a firm believer of whatever business you're in, we're all in the people business. And no matter what you're trying to do, you can't get things done without people. And at some point, people are emotional creatures. And if you can't relate to them on some kind of level, on a person-to-person level, then you're not going to get the best out of them. And at some point, you're not going to have them as an employee, a friend, a whatever, colleague, a student, a whatever. They will go elsewhere.
I remember when I was new and young into the workforce, and somebody told me that the best advice they could give me was that everybody should leave everything that's personal at home. Well, you know what? That's not realistic. That doesn't mean you come in and you dump it on everyone, right? But it's not realistic. Like, whatever is happening in our home lives, our personal lives, or a work relationship that's frustrating, like, it is part of who we are.
Yes.
It impacts, sometimes clouds the way we see things. It impacts our ability to bring energy, bring joy, bring a positive attitude to a workplace, to a meeting, whatever it might be. Like, we just need to recognize that it is there.
Yes.
And when needed, to help somebody get the kind of support they needed, but to also create the space for them to talk about it or not.
I think you can't bring your best work to work unless you bring your whole self and your whole authentic self to there as well. And so it is hard to do that when you leave personal stuff at the door here and you're putting on the ruse of, I'm not being my whole authentic self. I'm bringing my work persona here on what I think they want to see.
Yes. Dr. Dave, you have got a beautiful way of saying things. Thank you. You're absolutely right.
Thanks. Well, I'm smart enough to end on a high note. I'm kind of slow on the uptake of some things, but let me jump on the EQ train right this second and go ahead and close us out on this high note. But please, Ms. Tracy, tell the listeners how they can connect with you, the university, LinkedIn, anything you have, soak up all the goodness of Shenandoah University.
I'm certainly on LinkedIn at Tracy Fitzsimmons. You can just put in Tracy Fitzsimmons, President, Shenandoah University. We'd love for you to visit our website, su.edu. You can imagine there's lots of places like Syracuse and Stanford that have tried to buy that domain off of us, but it's ours, su.edu. We'd love for you to just take some time to get to know Shenandoah and all the remarkable things our students, faculty, and staff do. And if you come visit the beautiful northern Shenandoah Valley, please stop by Shenandoah as well. And finally, if anyone wants to reach out, I answer all my own emails and phone calls. So my email is pres, P-R-E-S, @su.edu. Love to hear from you all.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. And with that, we will wrap up this episode of Conversations on Leadership with Dr. Dave, and we will see you all next time. Take care.